Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Data Playbook. Now that the Sunday games are over, we're going to look into the Monday night games, starting with Tampa Bay at Detroit in this video, and then we'll do a separate one for Houston at Seattle. And getting into the matchup, you have Tampa Bay going to Detroit, with Detroit favored on the money line, and a spread of 6 points, with a total line of 53.5. So a few things to note here is that you have Tampa Bay pretty good in the scoring column, and not too bad at stopping their opponents from scoring. However, they're very bad at stopping their opponents from passing, and they're very good at passing. With Detroit, you have a scoring rank of 2, meaning that they score quite a few points, and about average in the allowed scoring column as well. They have a pretty good passing rank and a really, really good rushing rank, third best in the NFL. They do allow quite a bit of passing, and are about average at stopping the rush. One other interesting thing is that both these teams are top tier teams in terms of how much fantasy points they produce. So if you're looking for players, these might be the teams to look into more, with Detroit being the best in the league at scoring PPR as a team, and Tampa Bay third best in the league at scoring. Flipping over the averages real fast, here's what you get for both teams. I'll let you go through that on your own. If there's anything that you want to look at in more detail, you're welcome to pause and look through it. For your quarterbacks in this matchup, you have Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff, with Baker Mayfield averaging 20.9 fantasy points per game, and Jared Goff averaging 17.8 fantasy points per game. Baker has an interception that he's given up this year, but no other turnovers, and Jared Goff has 2 interceptions, and lost a fumble due to a sack. Flipping over to the averages here, we saw some of these in the last panel, but if you need more information and the week-by-week breakdown, here you go. Going through our running backs, you have Rachaad White because Bucky Irving is still listed as out, and Jahmyr Gibbs as the starter here. Rachaad White gets an average of 11.5 PPR points per game, while Jahmyr Gibbs gets an average of 17.2 PPR points per game. Just flipping these over to their averages if you want to look into that in more depth, as well as their rushing yards down here, and the receiving if you want to look into that too. And then I'm going to show David Montgomery just because he's part of the dynamic duo of running backs here. They make quite a difference having these 2 running backs. They probably are the most notable duo of running backs in the game. So we're just looking at it where David Montgomery gets 13 average PPR points per game. And if I switch over to these averages, here you get his average game numbers, as well as week-by-week information for both your rushing and receiving. And there's one more week down here that I'll scroll down to. But that's why we want to look at this, because between Gibbs and Montgomery, they have quite the even share between each other. And taking a look at our number 1 wide receivers, you have the potential return of Mike Evans and Amon-Ra here with Detroit. For the few weeks that Evans was in, he averages 11.3 fantasy PPR points per game and has no turnovers. Amon-Ra averages 21 fantasy PPR points per game and also has no turnovers. And then just flashing up their averages again and week-by-week information if you want to look through that. Even with Evans being out for the last few weeks, he still gets just under 20%, 18.3% of the receiving share on the team. And over here with Amon-Ra, he gets 30.5% of the team's receiving share. And then we look at the next in line receivers. You have Emeka Ibuka and you have Jameson Williams. Emika's been averaging 17.8 average fantasy points in PPR per game. And over here with Jameson Williams, you get almost 10 average fantasy PPR points per game. And then here you have the averages, along with the week-by-week breakdown. If we look as the second receivers here, they actually both own the largest share of receiving yards on their team, with Williams getting 40% and Emeka getting 31%. And then finally ending with our tight ends, you have Cade Otton and Sam Laporta. Otton averages 6.3 average fantasy points per game, while Sam Laporta gets 11.7 average fantasy points per game. And then you have the averages here and their breakdown week by week if you need that information. Quickly looking, you get Cade Otton with not a large receiving share with just under 7.5%. Sam Laporta gets a much larger share with 16.5%. So it'll be an interesting game to see. You get 2 heavy hitters in their scoring. So it'll come down to whether or not the passing really can be controlled, because they're both better at stopping the rush. You need Tampa Bay to really stop the dynamic duo rushers, but in the end, Tampa Bay is one of the worst at allowing passing yards, and so is Detroit. So with a passing rank of 3 over here, you may see a lot of passing on the Lions. I imagine the Lions will go back to their rushing game as usual, but they also are not a bad passing team. So with the poor passing rank of Tampa Bay here, you may see a lot of passing from Goff as well. And one more thing to note, here's the depth chart for Tampa Bay from ESPN. You have Bucky Irving listed as out, Chris Godwin listed as out, and then Mike Evans and Emeka both questionable. So it kind of depends on how broken up this receiving core is and everything. If everybody is out from these top 3, then you may have a much worse game for Tampa Bay. If you have Mike Evans and Emeka in, then It may be a big passing game to Amika and maybe even Evans. So it will all kind of depend on who's in this lineup. And you're just going to want to keep an eye on that as we get closer to the game. But there you have it for the Tampa Bay at Detroit game. We'll look into the Houston at Seattle in the next video, but I hope that you enjoyed and that there was something useful. If you did, like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what else you'd want to see in the future. Other than that, thank you so much for watching.